Trump and Hillary Clinton winning huge in New York. Does that sew things up for the two of them? We look ahead at what's next. Then, will the Republican establishment finally get pumped up for Trump, or do they still want to dump him? And we look at the pivotal African-American vote here and how it could sway not just the presidential race. We also visited Al Sharpton's National Action Network conference, and we got big names here to weigh in on the question. Evening, everybody. Welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Two New Yorkers winning big into New York primaries. And now we have Trump and Hillary Clinton seemingly comfortably edging towards their respective conventions here. A lot of open questions remain. Now, let's take a look at how they actually got there. The presidential frontrunners celebrating crushing victories in their home state.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, New York. We love New York.
Donald Trump claiming nearly all of the GOP's 95 delegates in New York. Hillary Clinton winning by double digits, pushing the Democratic nomination nearly out of Bernie Sanders' reach.
The race for the Democratic nomination is in the home stretch, and victory is in sight.
Sanders taking a day off in Vermont, but remaining confident, vowing to stay in the race.
Next week, we will be competing in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Delaware, and we look forward to winning a number of those states.
Ted Cruz insisting he's in it for the long haul too, despite coming in third last night behind Trump and John Kasich. Cruz now mathematically eliminated from clinching the nomination before the convention, but still undeterred.
If we come together and unite, we will win the Republican nomination.
But Trump tweeting today, now all he can do is be a spoiler. Never a nice thing to do. I will beat Hillary. Now, the one district that Trump lost last night in New York, here at home in Manhattan by ABC's estimates, you take a look at it, he'll need 58% of the remaining delegates to claim the GOP convention here. Next week, as you know, a huge week for primaries. Voters in 5 states, they head to the polls on Tuesday, and the states you see there on the screen expected to be friendly to Donald Trump. And for more, let's bring in Daniel Strauss. He's politics reporter at Politico, and he's here to talk about not just that, but also what is next for the Democrats. And Daniel, first of all, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. Let's look ahead of here a little bit. 6 days from now, if the polls are right, and we'll start with the Republicans, Trump ought to clean up. Let's say he's pacing here to be right around that magic number. At what point does the party start to say, even if they got to hold their nose in the process, you know, if he's our candidate, we might as well start rallying around the flag now?
Well, that's a good question, and I think there's going to be a divide even as he gets closer to 1237, and maybe if he gets to 1237. We do think if he's, our reporting does show that if he's, say, 50 delegates short, a lot of party leaders will just cave and say he's our nominee, and there's no more point in fighting it. And then there will be some diehards who will resist it till the bitter end and try and find every excuse to keep him from the nomination.
And you don't have to look too hard for those diehards. Mitch McConnell seems pretty clear here that he doesn't think that Trump will get the number, and he thinks that if he doesn't get it on the first ballot, it's not going to happen, period. Paul Ryan, while certainly not endorsing Trump, he seemed to indicate that, hey, if you weren't a candidate, don't look for some white knight over here. They all have their own agendas, don't they? Some folks just worried about keeping the House together. Some folks very worried that the Democrats could take the Senate. Even within the party, it's not just division about Trump, it's division about strategy.
Right. A lot of party leaders and a lot of Republicans feel that if Trump gets the nomination, it could be disastrous for strongholds within the GOP, such as the House or the Senate, such as fundraising, and also their chances of regaining the White House. And that's a big concern. That's the argument there. But that hasn't moved someone like Paul Ryan, an establishment party favorite, from saying that if the GOP gets to a contested convention, he'd happily walk in and be a nominee for president of the United States.
So we've heard a lot made that there's been not only campaign shakeup, but more of a professionalization in the Trump campaign. He did seem to be more a message last night, for whatever that's worth here. We know Paul Manafort's going to have a more prominent role here, and Lewandowski pretty much going to be a body guy. How real and significant is that, and just how much is it compared to what we've seen before? Anything looks more professional.
I mean, it's actually a huge shift for Donald Trump and his brand throughout this entire Republican primary process. A big part of his appeal to Republican voters is his sort of ability and his penchant to tell it like it is, to speak off the cuff, to say things that other candidates won't say. But what we saw last night was a candidate who's a little more careful, and that seems to be Paul Manafort's touch, that he's able to put a bridle on Trump and professionalize him in a way that's more tenable for a general election against someone like Hillary Clinton.
Well, let's speak about Hillary Clinton and the Democrats right now. What I found interesting in your recent reporting was Sanders does not seem willing to go quietly into the good night, and even some of his folks say they're going to lobby superdelegates in advance of Philadelphia. Is that because they have to say it, or do you really believe that they got nothing to lose, and whatever attacks that we saw in the last 2 weeks leading up to Tuesday night, we're going to see more of that, in the next week before the next mini Super Tuesday and all the way to the convention?
Yeah, there's not really a good argument to make that Sanders will drop out anytime soon. He still can raise a lot of money. He still has a lot of passionate supporters. There are a lot of contests on the calendar still. And the Sanders campaign has quietly but diligently been working to reach out to superdelegates. They've had mixed results there, but it's something that they're very interested in continuing to do. And they picked up some superdelegates along the way. There are some superdelegates like Dan Lipinski in Illinois who said in the case of a contested convention, he would support Senator Sanders. So it really seems like he's going to take it all the way to the convention, even if he loses states that are rich in delegates like Pennsylvania or California.
Daniel, is part of that challenge that there doesn't seem to be a natural fit here? He obviously doesn't seem to be a running mate here for Hillary Clinton, and moreover, other than a plum spot maybe at the convention for a speaking time slot, doesn't seem like he'd go into a cabinet there. He seems to be an ideology guy. He's 74. He's obviously self-identified as a socialist. Is that part of the challenge for Hillary? Is hard to bring him under the tent here when they don't agree on as much as maybe traditionally you'd see in even a bruising primary process?
Well, both Bernie and Hillary are happy to say that they agree on more than they do compared with their Republican counterparts. And the truth is, if Hillary does get the nomination, she does need Sanders' support. She needs Sanders supporters. She needs their energy in the general election. She needs Sanders' fundraising lists. And that's how Sanders could be useful to Hillary Clinton in the general election.
Last question, speaking of the Clinton campaign, I spoke to folks, and with unanimity within the Clinton camp, they say, we have our fingers crossed Trump is going to be the general election opponent here. They desperately want Trump more than anybody else in the field. A, are you hearing the same thing? And B, do you think they ought to be careful what they wish for, or is that the best matchup for them?
I mean, anytime a candidate gets a nomination to be president of the United States of one of the two major political parties, there's a chance that they could become president of the United States. Still, both Sanders and Clinton supporters are very, very eager to have a general election with Donald Trump on the other side. They feel that's their strongest candidate to run against. Although they are more than happy to run against Ted Cruz, they feel that the argument against him is a very strong one, too.
All right. Daniel Strauss, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, the panel joins us to weigh in on both of the races, plus that special election to replace Dean Skelos literally coming down to a few hundred votes. Stick around. I'll be right back.